Hey everybody, Norm from Tested here. I'm in Adam's shop today because it's my first time using a new tool that we have in the Tested office. It was actually one of Simone's favorite things of last year. She just got it, and while she's out of the office this week, she gave me permission to be the first person to use this. It's the Shaper Origin, which looks like some type of high-tech, futuristic, scanning device. But what it is actually a CNC router, a handheld CNC router. We visited the Shaper offices about a year and a half ago when this was still in prototype, and we're really impressed by the technology they put into this. Typically, when you think of CNCs, you think of three-axis CNCs, which can be a tabletop machine or a big machine, but having a gantry. The idea is that the computer control, CNC, computer numerical control, can take digital files, vector files like SVGs, things you designed in Adobe Illustrator, and then engrave that or route it through a material. And with a gantry system, the computer can, using stepper motors, very precisely follow the paths. But what this does, what the Shaper Origin does, is combine the computer vision instead of using stepper motors and your own force in moving this router so that you can actually engrave and carve and cut on materials of almost any size, and including things that are really small as well. So what I wanted to do today is maybe do a test engrave and show you exactly how it works and actually learn for myself as well. So the system, I'm going to put this aside for now. The system works by using this tracking marker. This is their Shaper tape. And the tape has these icons on here. They kind of look like dominoes, but what these actually are tracking markers. Every one of these little rectangles is different. And so include two of these rolls, and I think you can buy a new roll, which is like 150 feet for about $18 on their website, so it is a consumable. But you tape this all over your material. In this case, we just have a small sheet of MDF. Thought we'd start with something simple, light, easy to cut through. And we peel off a bunch, and I'll get a couple of these strips and tape them on here. So what's happening right now is that I'm kind of evenly spacing these out across most of my material. And what the Shaper Origin tool is going to do is going to be able to look at these tracking markers using a system of cameras and then basically create a workspace, a digital workspace that I can store in memory and know where it is relative to every part of this material. I think this should be good enough. I want to try varying degrees. Because this is a consumable, I don't want to use too much. And I feel like this is a good enough wherever I put this Shaper Origin tool, the camera system, which is right here in between the lights, can see the markers. So right now on this touchscreen, and I'll flip it around so you guys can see, there's a touchscreen here that can see the tape. And if it moves beyond an area where there is no tape, I'll get a pop-up and says no tape found. So the first step in prepping the material after putting on the tape is then scanning it and letting the system know exactly how big a material this is. So I'll do a new scan. And I'll start scan. So there are two buttons here. There's a cancel button on the left here. The green button is go. Click start scan. And right now I'm going to pick this up and look around all of my surfaces. Let's see. Aha, yeah, it's definitely recognizing. I can slide this around all the way around. Just one strip of tape won't do. It needs to see a bunch of strips together in line. Pretty good. All right, so I've scanned my workspace, and now it's saving onto the system here. All the processing, I think, happens in here, and you can load designs using a USB port here by plugging in the USB key, or you connect over Wi-Fi and then upload it to the Shaper website, and that's what I'm going to do and download a design I'd previously made. Okay, so I have my scan, and let's look at this display right here. If I double tap the display, there are 3 zoom levels, and you can see those fiducial markers exactly as I've taped them here, but what you're seeing isn't a live view from the camera system. If I put my hand there, you actually don't see my hand. This is a composite image that it took based on that scan. So even though I move it around and it looks just like this sheet of MDF, all the way to that edge, you actually don't see beyond the edge because I didn't scan that part. And if I double tap it one more time, you can actually see the full scan, that full composite image, and the field of view, which is that trapezoid of the camera system. So basically, I can move this tool around the workspace, and as long as there are a couple strips of those fiducial markers within that trapezoid, the system will know exactly where it's at. So next up, I'm going to load up a design. There's a design button right here, and click, and it looks like I can do some basic rudimentary design on the tool itself, which I think might be a good way to start. Let's go with a rectangle, and let's say I want to make a rectangle something maybe, how about 15 inches wide by, let's say, 12 inches tall. And I can design and say I want to plop a rectangle right here. Let's place it right there. Press the green button, it's placed it, and now it's zoomed me all the way in, and it's ready to do some cutting. Now the tool, the spindle, is not attached yet. I've removed that so I can attach an end mill, and they include 3 end mills. This is just an engraving bit, so I'm going to plug that in. There's a collet system. I've already tightened that. Plug that in right here. Use the tool to tighten, and plug it in. You can also see there's a dust collection tube right here, and we're just using shop vac that's plugged into that, so it's not going to get dusty everywhere. And I think we're just about ready to start. Let's go now. We've done scan, we've done design. Let's go to cut. Our spindle is off, and now we're going to check out some of the cut settings. Cut. And then look over here in this left-hand menu. We have some presets, whether I want to go with an engrave, or I want to cut through the thickness of material. We're going to be engraving through here initially, so just 0.02 inches. And of course, anyone who's using CNC knows that yes, we have our X and Y axes calibrated, but the system right now doesn't know the Z axis. It has no idea exactly how far the tip of that end mill is to the material. So there is a Z touch button. I'm going to press that, and that will plunge this down and calibrate the Z-axis. Calibrated. And I think we're just about ready to start. If you look at on the screen here again, I'm going to zoom out. You can see I've drawn this rectangle. And right now, the beginning line of this rectangle is directly under the spindle. There's no camera there right now, but this is based on what the system knows about where it is and the image, the composite image it took before. This is what it looks like. That line's going to cut right over this fiducial marker, and if I move, that's where that fiducial marker is. All right, let's go turn on the shop vac and get to cutting. Okay, it aborted, but some really interesting things to note. One, look how straight this line is. I'm not this precise. Yes, I know I'm a robot, but there is some error compensation here. Even though I'm guiding this tool along as best as I can, there's about maybe like a ½ inch, 3/4 inch of compensation where the spindle actually error corrects. Now, when I got around to this corner, look how perfect that corner is as well. When I got there, I pressed the green button, and it did the corner by itself and then guided me forward here. Now it stopped not because I wavered too far outside the line, but because if you look at the screen, it'll actually give you an indicator of how many tracking markers it can see, or at least a rough approximate. So full black bar here means it sees as many tracking markers as it needs for great tracking. If I start moving it off of the material, you see it decreases, and once it gets over to the red, then it's not going to be tracking well at all, and then it'll stop and it'll say, well, I don't know where I am. Let's maybe reorient the Shaper tool and get it back in view of all these tracking markers. All right, let's finish this rectangle. fine-looking rectangle, if I do say so myself. But we're not done. That was just a first test cut, which I think pretty successful. I did whip up a design in Illustrator, and there are some guides. They include a template so you know how to color code your vector lines. And I've uploaded them to the server, and now I'm going to download it and place something in this rectangle as a more thorough test. So let's get started. Okay, I think that was super interesting. It took a little more time than I thought. That was about half an hour of engraving, and part of that's because the design I made was just lines that weren't necessarily connected, so I'd be raising the spindle and lowering it a bunch. But it's a labor-intensive tool to use. The guidance on the correction motor is awesome. Like, these lines look very straight to me, but I am moving this around using my whole body. Ergonomically, I think it's comfortable. My hands feel really good on this, but I did occasionally have to take a step back and make sure I wasn't hurting my back and leaning over too much and putting undue stress on my body when doing this. And the other thing I wanted to do with this design, which you can see is, of course, it's a maze. It's maybe a hedge maze even, is how destructive a design like this would be to the tracking markers themselves. You look at this right now, I can see the tracking markers there, but can the computer vision system still make sense of these markers now that I've engraved over a bunch of it? And the answer is no. If I move to the edge of my material and try to rescan, it actually doesn't see a lot of the parts here where I've already engraved over, which makes some sense, which means that if you're going to be using a big piece of material and using this consumable tape on it, you're going to want to start maybe all your projects in one corner and make your way across the material, as opposed to what I've done, which is be destructive in the middle of the material, which makes then operating this on the other side, on the sides, a little more difficult, and have to put more tape down. But I think it's a really novel device. This is, of course, just our very first test project with this. We're going to try to come up with more things to do with the Shaper Origin, and I think it's a success and definitely a very, very interesting piece of technology. Thanks to Simone for letting me be the first one to unbox this and use this while she's out of the office, and we'll be doing more projects in the future. Thanks for watching. See you next time.